Hello and welcome to Spirit Touched. We're going to be talking about safety. Let's talk about safety and protection. This world God made to be safe has not been safe since Genesis 3. The fault of that belongs on us. Why? Doubt and unbelief on our part. If ever since then, we have tried to come up with ways to protect ourselves. We invented all kinds of weapons, thinking they would keep us safe. They can, depending on whose hands they are in. We are not safe anywhere anymore. There are evil people who want to harm us for all kinds of reasons. None of those reasons are valid. Walls were built around cities to keep their enemies out. Take a look at what God says about those walls in Deuteronomy 28:52. Jericho had a wall around it to save it from the Israelis. But take a look at Joshua 6:1 through 21. On the day that wall came down, everyone but Rahab and her family died. Why? Because she believed in the God of the two spies she hid in her house. Later, she married one of them. That's why her name is in the family tree of Jesus. Let's go back to Adam and Eve in Genesis at the end of chapter 3. Once God kicked them out of the garden for their protection, he placed two cherubim angels and a sword of fire before the gate to protect the tree of life. Why? So that they couldn't get back inside to eat the tree's fruit and live forever in their sin. Now let's talk about the wall of Jerusalem, God's holy city, in Nehemiah chapter 2. Before God exiled his chosen to Babylon, their captors tore down that wall. 70 years later, the king of those captors allowed Nehemiah to go back and check out those walls to see what needed to be done to rebuild them. In chapters 3 and 4, is the story of that rebuilding and repairing. Look how it was done with a weapon in one hand while they worked with the other. When necessary, God warned them with the sound of the shofar when their enemies came near. At night the workers stayed inside the city along with their helpers as guards. They even had their weapons on when they took their water breaks. Wow, talk about layers of protection. God has them. God also gives us rules to protect us. In Exodus 20, there are 10 of them. However, before God even finished giving them to Moses, the people had already broken the first two. They were given just 50 days after they left Egypt for the promised land. Breaking those two rules and all of their stubbornness along the way is why it took them 40 years to make what should have been about a 30 to 40-day trip. They that Before they entered the promised land, God told them to kill everyone and everything in it. Why? Because if they did not do so, they would end up marrying them and worshiping their idol false gods. They did not, and that's exactly what happened. That's why they are still having trouble with the ancestors of those people to this very day. Deuteronomy 33:27 tells us the safest place for us to be and why. Check out the much loved hymn, Leaning on the Everlasting Arms. There's no more secure place. In them, there's no fear or any reason to be alarmed. When we have fellowship with him is when we get to lean on those super strong arms. Yet on those super strong yet gentle everlasting arms. It's where we find his blessed peace, which is divine and all ours. There's those arms can keep us on his straight and narrow path. When we are in those arms is when we are the closest we can possibly be to his heart. Those everlasting arms are what kept Peter from sinking. Matthew 14:25 through 33. Then look at Leviticus 25:18 tells us we can live in safety, and how Deuteronomy 12:10 tells us God is the one who gave them safety. Job 11:13 through 19 tells us we can have safety when we devote our hearts totally to God. Psalm 4:8 tells us where David found his safety. Proverbs 11:14 in the KJV tells us there's safety in wise counseling if we will heed it. Isaiah 14:30 verse 8a 30 part A tells us that the needy can lie down in safety. Exodus 15:1 says that we should sing unto the Lord because of the protection he gives us. Why? Because he is our strength and our song and our safety and our salvation. His safety and protection are just two of his many blessings. Thank him for them daily. You may send your prayer request to heanswerstwo@gmail.com, and we'll ask that he keep you in his safety.